Is the Master Collection going to be your very first experience with Metal Gear Solid 1? Or maybe you're a longtime fan of the series who hasn't revisited the first MGS game in a very long time, but you plan to do so once the Master Collection drops. Well, either way, I'm going to be giving you guys 10 essential beginner tips so you don't go into Shadow Moses looking like a rookie.
I told you I'm no rookie.
Not to be confused with VR missions, which you can also play as part of the Master Collection, VR training is found within Metal Gear Solid's main menu and consists of 30 stages intended to teach you the very basic movement options and mechanics present in the main game. This is an excellent way for those who are either brand new players or fans of the series that are revisiting MGS1 for the first time in a while to find their bearings and familiarize themselves with the controls before committing to a full playthrough. The first time you load up VR training, the only option present will be training mode. Once you've played through all 10 stages, you unlock Time Attack mode, which puts everything you just learned to the test by throwing harder variations of the training mode stages at you. In all honesty, the initial 10 training mode stages should be more than enough for most players to grasp the basics, but if you want to learn a bit more and really familiarize yourself with the fundamentals, go ahead and give Time Attack mode a try. VR training is a mode I see very few new players bother with because it's a bit tucked away in the main menu and because everyone is so hyped to get into the legendary game that is MGS1. Either way, VR training is invaluable for those wanting to start their Metal Gear Solid journey smoothly. Metal Gear Solid is not an easy game by any means, especially if this is your first time experiencing it. By today's standards, the controls, camera angle, and the way you aim and fire a weapon could all be considered cumbersome and convoluted. This adds an extra element to the game's inherent difficulty and may cause unnecessary stress on new or inexperienced players. Not to mention, out of the trilogy comprised of MGS 1, 2, and 3, MGS 1 is the hardest game at the baseline level, meaning playing on normal in MGS 1 could be compared to playing on hard in MGS 2 or very hard in MGS 3 respectively. For these reasons, I would highly recommend a brand new player to play on easy. The main differences between easy and normal are: enemies won't see you or hear you from as far away, enemy gunfire doesn't do as much damage to you, rations are much more potent and much easier to find, which is also the case for ammo, defeating bosses refills your HP bar completely instead of partially, and the amount of hits required to defeat bosses are slightly lessened. All of that being said, if this isn't your first time playing or if you're confident in your abilities after playing through VR training, normal difficulty can provide a nice challenge while still remaining fair to slightly more experienced players. The codec is usually reserved for saving the game and for all the exposition found outside of the game's cutscenes. You can gain a lot of insight on characters including Snake by remembering not to neglect the various codec contexts you have throughout the game. However, the codec can also be a source of gameplay tips and clues to nudge you in the right direction during moments in which you're either confused about what to do next or just need some advice on how to tackle a certain boss encounter. Remember, your codec is always easily and readily accessible by pressing whatever the equivalent of the select button is on your controller. Even if you don't think you'll need any help getting through the game, the full MGS1 experience definitely includes a lot of time listening to the plethora of calls and conversations Snake has with the supporting cast.
How the fuck do I shoot him?
You have the ability to aim and fire weapons while moving in Metal Gear Solid. This is one of the most common rookie mistakes I see when I hop into a new player's live stream or playthrough of MGS1. The amount of people that are not familiar with this mechanic would surprise you, and it's not just new players that aren't privy to this. The way that it's done is by holding down the fire button and then pressing and holding down the crouch or crawl button at the same time. This will allow you to move Snake freely while he has his weapon drawn and ready to fire. Whenever you actually want to start firing rounds, all you have to do is let go of the fire button and then press it again to fire a shot. Keep in mind that when firing an automatic weapon such as the FAMAS, all you have to do is let go of the fire button once and then press it again and hold it for automatic fire. Learning and mastering how to fire while moving will make certain portions of the game much easier. It is an essential skill that unfortunately even longtime fans of the series don't know or use to its full extent.
He's still not dead. He keeps getting up. How do you permanently knock someone down?
Even new players know that you are able to punch, throw, and put enemies in a chokehold. The problem comes in the form of not knowing how to perform each attack consistently. The punch-punch-kick combo is easy enough. All you have to do is press the attack button, circle by default on a PlayStation controller, 3 times. You can also break it up and punch only once or twice. The harder attacks for most new players to get down are the throw and chokehold. Both are performed by pressing the same button, square by default on a PlayStation controller, which is the reason for most of the confusion. Let's start with the chokehold. To perform a chokehold on an enemy, you must run up to them while undetected and press square without holding any directional input on the D-pad or analog stick. The easiest way to do this consistently is by letting go of your movement button or direction once you're in chokehold range. Along with how to perform the chokehold, there are also two options to what you can do once you have an enemy in your chokehold. You can either A, press the chokehold button rapidly to snap their necks and kill them, or B, press it enough times to have the enemy pass out for a short amount of time. Keep in mind the amount of times you need to squeeze their neck to make them pass out varies on each difficulty. To throw an enemy, you basically want to do the opposite of what you do to choke them. Run up to the enemy you want to throw and press the square button as well as a direction to throw them. Each of these attacks have their uses throughout a playthrough of MGS1, and getting them all down consistently will open up a ton of new possibilities for dealing with enemies in your path. Before we move on to the next tip, I want to know what helpful tip you would give a new player. Let me know in the comments below, and I also want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's been showing support, whether it's through liking, commenting, or subscribing. The channel just hit 8,000 subscribers, and we're already well on our way to 9K. Remember, my goal is 10K before the Master Collection. If you guys could help me hit that, that would be awesome. Also, remember, I do plan to start live streaming soon, so subscribing and also hitting the notification bell is the absolute best way to keep track of when I go live. If you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. I make at least one Metal Gear related video just like this a week, along with a couple of shorts. And again, I am going to start live streaming very soon. On to the next tip. Learning how to use the environment to your advantage in Metal Gear Solid is vital to success. Obstacles meant to alert enemies to your presence can be used as a means to create gaps to sneak through maps. Things such as footprints in the snow, graded panels on the ground, or knocking on a wall can get the attention of enemies, allowing you to sneak by undetected. Newer players often believe they need to eliminate every single enemy blocking their path, when in reality, sometimes the best course of action is to simply be patient and wait for enemies to patrol away, or cause a distraction within your environment to cause them to break their patrol routes. As you play through the game, look for opportunities around the various maps to cause chaos among enemies. As far as tools in your arsenal go, the ability to know how to exploit the enemy's senses is crucial. There are two items that will significantly help a beginner with their first playthrough. The first item are the thermal goggles, which can be found very early on in the game on the second floor of the tank hangar if you picked up the SOCOM found within a parked truck outside of the hangar. These are extremely helpful in a variety of ways. You can use them to see infrared beams that are triggered if you walk into them. They can be used to see placed explosives hidden in the ground, or you can use them to see enemies that can conceal themselves. The second item is the body armor, which is found within the nuclear warhead storage building basement level 2. Keep in mind if you didn't pick up the thermal goggles earlier on in the game at the tank hangar, they will be found here instead of the body armor. This item does exactly what it sounds like it would do. It helps by mitigating damage from enemies and even bosses. These two items are not needed to progress through Metal Gear Solid, so if you're confident you can finish the game without them, you can forego picking them up entirely. For newer players, however, I would definitely take the extra time to find and pick these items up just in case you end up needing them. Whenever weapons run out of ammo in Metal Gear Solid, they will automatically reload. But there is a technique the game itself dubs the tactical reload that the player can perform manually that is quicker and more efficient. This is done by quickly unequipping and then re-equipping a weapon when the magazine is partially empty. It works with all weapons, and it's especially lethal to use with weapons that can usually only be fired once. Tactical reloading has its crucial applications in Metal Gear Solid 1, but it's actually very important to learn how to perform this advanced technique, as it's even more useful in Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3. Tip number 5 was all about learning how to perform the basic CQB techniques found within Metal Gear Solid. There is actually a way to make them even better, and it involves cutting down the time it takes for you to regain control of Snake after you perform any of these techniques. The way it's done is by first performing, let's say, a throw, and then equipping a weapon such as the chaff grenade. You'll notice how quickly you're able to move Snake around compared to when you don't use this trick. The same trick can be done when you choke someone out, resulting in being able to move much faster after snapping a guard's neck. Using this tip allows you even more wiggle room after interacting with an enemy, and in some scenarios, this trick can be the difference between being discovered and making it out undetected. The last tip requires something that is actually found outside of the game, and it's also something brand new and exclusive to the Master Collection version of Metal Gear Solid, and that is the Digital Master Book. This thing seems like it's going to be packed with interesting lore and character tidbits, but there is also an entire section dedicated to gameplay tips and hidden tricks you can perform. Things such as how to make elevators come down quicker, where to obtain cardboard boxes and their uses, an easier way to defeat certain bosses. There are even speedrunning tips and ways to trigger lesser known cutscenes or Easter eggs. Right now, all that's available is a sample on the official Master Collection website, but once the Master Collection releases, you'll have access to this digital book in its entirety. Make sure you use it to its full extent. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much, as always, for watching. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully you learned something that you can take into the Master Collection once it drops. I hope you enjoy your first playthrough of Metal Gear Solid 1, and as always, I will see you guys in the next one.